It was just another morning flight. Row 10, basic economy. A man in a faded jacket read stories to his 9-year-old daughter. The passenger in front turned around, annoyed. Can someone tell that guy to keep his kid quiet? The man just smiled. He pulled a blanket over his daughter. Then the plane dropped to altitude. The captain's voice crackled over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special escort today. Outside the window, an F-22 Raptor rolled past, its wings tilted in salute. A pilot's voice cut through the cabin. Permission to greet. Welcome back, Viper 1. The entire cabin went silent. His name was David Cole, 43 years old, single father, aircraft maintenance engineer for a commercial airline. Nobody knew much about him, just that he was quiet, kept to himself, and that he had done something in the military once, something he never talked about. His daughter Emily was 9, bright eyes, endless questions about planes and the people who flew them high above the clouds. Dad, do pilots ever get scared? Everyone gets scared, sweetheart. Brave people just fly anyway. That morning they were flying to Florida to visit a grave. Emily's mother had been a pilot too. She died in a training accident 7 years ago. David had raised their daughter alone ever since. At the check-in counter, the agent scanned their tickets. Budget economy, cheapest seats available. She smirked. Row 10, basic economy, sir. David nodded. Perfect, my favorite row. The woman rolled her eyes. Another broke traveler trying to save money. On the plane, a businessman in a pressed suit sat across the aisle. He glanced at David's faded canvas jacket, the frayed edges, the worn patches. He muttered under his breath, another cheap traveler. Emily heard it. She squeezed her father's hand. It's okay, Dad. We fly different. David smiled. He always taught her that dignity was not something you wore. It was something you carried. They settled into their seats. Emily pulled out her coloring book. David helped her with the seatbelt. The captain's voice came over the speakers, introducing the flight. Standard protocol, flight time, weather conditions, cruising altitude. But as the captain spoke, David whispered something under his breath. Numbers, codes, radio protocol. Victor Tango 79er, altitude 35,000, bearing 270. Two young pilots sitting 3 rows ahead turned around. They looked at each other, confused. Did he just recite F-22 radio protocol? One whispered. No way. That's classified. They stared at David, but he was already back to coloring with his daughter, completely calm, completely unaware. The plane took off smoothly. Emily pressed her face against the window. Look, Dad, we're flying. We sure are, kiddo. She turned to him, serious for a moment. Do you miss it? Flying? David looked out at the clouds. For a second, something flickered in his eyes, a memory, a life left behind. Sometimes, but I like where I landed. Emily smiled and went back to her coloring book. She was drawing 3 airplanes, 2 fighter jets, and 1 commercial plane in the middle. What's that? David asked. That's you in the middle, Dad, and those are your friends keeping you safe. He stared at the drawing, his throat tightened. You're a smart kid, Em. I know. You tell me every day. Around them, the cabin filled with the usual sounds. Passengers talking, babies crying, flight attendants pushing carts down the aisle. Nobody paid attention to the man in row 10. Nobody noticed the small pin on his jacket, faded and scratched. A tiny silver emblem of wings and lightning. Nobody asked what it meant, and David liked it that way. Because the best pilots, he always believed, were the ones who never needed to announce their arrival. They just flew, and when the time came, the sky would remember them. 30 minutes into the flight, Emily reached for her orange juice. The cup slipped. Orange liquid splashed across the armrest. Some of it hit the businessman's sleeve. He jerked back like he had been burned. Watch it, kid. Where's your father anyway? David was already unbuckling his seatbelt. He grabbed napkins from the seat pocket. I'm right here. I'm so sorry about that. He wiped the man's armrest, his sleeve. The businessman yanked his arm away. Figures. People like you shouldn't travel with kids if you can't afford better seats. Emily's face went red. Her eyes filled with tears. David put a hand on her shoulder. Gentle, calm. It's okay, sweetheart. Accidents happen. A flight attendant appeared, arms crossed, face stern. Sir, please control your child. Other passengers are trying to relax. David looked up at her. His voice stayed even. She's fine, just learning gravity. The attendant frowned but walked away. The businessman muttered something about cheap travelers and poor parenting. Emily stared at her lap. Her small hands trembled. I'm sorry, Dad. Hey, David lifted her chin. You didn't do anything wrong. Juice spills. People forget kindness sometimes. That's not on you. She nodded but stayed quiet for the rest of the hour. David went back to reading. But inside, something old and familiar stirred. The discipline to stay calm when others wanted confrontation. The training to assess a situation before reacting. He had learned that a long time ago, in a different life. The plane hit turbulence. Sudden, violent. The cabin shook. Overhead bins rattled. Passengers gasped. 3 rows behind David, an elderly man clutched his chest. His face went pale. His breathing turned shallow and rapid. His wife screamed, "Help! Someone help! He can't breathe!" The flight attendants rushed over, confused, panicked. David was already moving. He unbuckled, pushed past the businessman, reached the elderly man in seconds. "Sir, can you hear me?" David's voice cut through the chaos, firm, controlled. The man's eyes rolled back. His lips turned blue. David checked his pulse. Weak, irregular. Without hesitation, he tilted the man's head back, cleared his airway, started chest compressions. 30 compressions, 2 rescue breaths. His hands moved with precision. Muscle memory from hundreds of drills, from combat scenarios where seconds meant life or death. The flight attendant stood frozen. "Get me the AED from the forward galley, now." David didn't look up. One of them ran. Another passenger, a doctor, pushed through the crowd. "I'm a physician. Let me—" He stopped. Watched David work. "You're doing it perfectly. Former paramedic?" David didn't answer. He kept counting compressions, kept breathing for the man. The AED arrived. David attached the pads, pressed analyze. Shock advised, clear. Everyone stepped back. David pressed the button. The man's body jerked. The machine recalculated. "Rhythm normal." The elderly man gasped. His eyes fluttered open. His wife sobbed. "Thank you, oh God, thank you." David checked his pulse again. Strong. Steady. "You're okay, sir, just breathe slowly. Help is on the way." The doctor knelt beside him. "That was textbook. Where did you train?" David stood up, brushed off his hands. "Doesn't matter, he's stable now." He walked back to row 10, sat down, buckled his seatbelt. Emily stared at him with wide eyes. "Dad, you saved him." "Just helped him breathe, kiddo, that's all." The businessman across the aisle said nothing, but his expression had changed. The smugness was gone, replaced by something uncomfortable. Shame, maybe. Up in the cockpit, the captain had watched everything on the cabin camera. He turned to his first officer. "Who is that guy?" "No idea, but he just saved a life like it was routine." 20 minutes later, the captain's radio crackled. Military frequency, encrypted. "Commercial flight 749er, this is Raptor lead, requesting permission to approach under Protocol Viper." The captain blinked. "Say again, Protocol Viper?" "Affirmative, Protocol Viper, retired classification." "We have authorization." The first officer leaned over. "Protocol Viper? I've never heard of that." "Neither have I." The captain keyed his mic. "Raptor lead, state your purpose." "We're escorting a passenger. Confirming presence of transponder signal Golf Tango 73. The captain checked his instruments. A faint signal was pinging from inside the cabin. Old military tech, practically obsolete, but still active. He pulled up the passenger manifest, cross-referenced the GPS coordinates. Row 10, Seat A, David Cole. The captain's hands froze on the controls. "First officer, pull up the classified registry. Search David Cole, military. The screen loaded. A file appeared. Redacted, restricted, eyes only. But one line was visible. Colonel David Cole, call sign Viper 1. Status, honorably retired. The first officer's jaw dropped. Viper 1? The Viper 1? The captain swallowed hard. Get him up here. Now. Outside the windows, two F-22 Raptors pulled into formation, one on each side of the commercial jet. Their wings gleamed in the sunlight. Passengers pressed their faces to the glass. Phones came out. People pointed and whispered. Why are fighter jets following us? Is this an escort? Are we in danger? The flight attendant approached row 10. Her voice was different now, respectful, almost nervous. Mr. Cole, the captain requests your presence in the cockpit. David looked up from his book. Is something wrong? No, sir. He just needs to speak with you. Emily grabbed his hand. Daddy, what's happening? David smiled, calm as ever. Just old friends saying hi, sweetheart. I'll be right back. He stood, walked down the aisle. Every eye in the cabin followed him. The businessman stared, his mouth slightly open. The man in the faded jacket, the cheap traveler, the guy who couldn't control his kid, was being summoned to the cockpit by fighter jets. Type respect if you believe ranks fade, honor doesn't. David stepped into the cockpit. The captain and first officer turned. Both stood straighter. Something in their posture changed when they saw him. The captain handed him a headset. Mr. Cole, we're receiving military communications. They're asking for you. David put on the headset. His expression didn't change, but his eyes sharpened. This is Cole. Static crackled. Then a voice, young, respectful, almost reverent. Sir, this is Raptor Lead, Lieutenant Marcus Chen, call sign Hawk 2. Permission to greet. David closed his eyes for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. Permission granted, Hawk 2. Sir. The pilot's voice wavered slightly. Welcome back, Viper 1. The cockpit went silent. The captain stared. The first officer's mouth hung open. David keyed the mic. I'm not Viper 1 anymore, Lieutenant. That was a long time ago. With respect, sir, once Viper, always Viper. Your call sign is legend in our squadron. By outside the window, the two F-22s rolled closer. Their canopies were visible now. The pilots inside raised their hands, saluted. David's jaw tightened. He didn't salute back. He just nodded once. The captain found his voice. You're the Viper 1? From Operation Falcon Dawn? David turned. You know about Falcon Dawn? Every military pilot knows about Falcon Dawn, sir. It's in the textbooks. The first officer leaned forward. You led 6 F-22s through a Category 5 storm. 0 visibility, complete radio blackout. You brought all 6 jets home. David's voice was flat. We got lucky. Lucky? The captain shook his head. Sir, the survival rate for that scenario was 0.3%. You redefined possible. David said nothing. Old memories surfaced. The storm, the screaming alarms, the voices of his squadron, terrified, trusting him. He had been 31 years old, but he had trained for chaos, mastered it. And when the sky tried to kill them, he had flown straight through it. The radio crackled again. Viper 1, this is Raptor 2, Captain Sarah Lynn. You don't know me, sir, but you trained in my instructor. Your manual is our Bible. Every formation we fly, every tactic we drill, it's because of you. David exhaled slowly. Captain Lynn, that manual was written by a whole team. Your name is on every page, sir. Your tactics saved my life in Syria last year. I wouldn't be here without you. He closed his eyes. The weight pressed down. All those years of training, of writing procedures, of teaching young pilots to survive. He thought it was over, thought he had left that world behind. But the sky never forgot. The captain opened the cabin intercom. His hand hovered over the button. Mr. Cole, may I tell them? David hesitated. He thought about Emily, about the quiet life they had built. But he also thought about the elderly man whose life he had just saved, about the young pilots flying outside. He nodded. The captain pressed the button. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I need to share something with you. The cabin went quiet. Passengers looked up from their phones. We are currently being escorted by two F-22 Raptors. This is not a drill. This is not a threat. This is an honor. He paused, looked at David. We have a passenger on board. A man sitting in row 10. His name is Colonel David Cole. Call sign Viper 1. Whispers rippled through the cabin. 12 years ago, Colonel Cole led one of the most dangerous missions in modern history, Operation Falcon Dawn. He brought an entire squadron home alive. His tactics are still taught at every fighter pilot school. The businessman in first class turned pale. He has been traveling with us today in basic economy. Quiet, humble, asking for nothing. The flight attendant who had scolded David earlier covered her mouth. But the sky does not forget its heroes. And today the United States Air Force wants to say thank you. Outside, the two Raptors rolled inverted. Their bellies flashed in the sun. Then they righted themselves and tilted their wings. A perfect salute. The cabin erupted. Some passengers stood. Others pressed against the windows. Many were crying. That's him? The guy in the old jacket? He saved that man earlier. Did you see? I told him to keep his kid quiet. Oh my God. In row 10, Emily sat frozen. Tears streamed down her face. An older woman next to her leaned over. Sweetheart, is that your dad? Emily nodded. Her voice was a whisper. He never told me. Some heroes don't need to tell. They just are. Back in the cockpit, David spoke into the headset one more time. Raptor lead, Raptor 2, you honor me. But I'm not the one who needs thanking. You're the ones flying now. You're the ones keeping people safe. That's the real work. Lieutenant Chen's voice cracked. Sir, we fly because you showed us how. You gave us the proof that impossible is just another word for not yet. Then fly better than I did, Lieutenant. Fly smarter, fly safer, and bring everyone home. Yes, sir. Every time, sir. The two Raptors pulled up and away. They climbed vertical, afterburners blazing, a final salute against the blue sky. Then they were gone. David removed the headset, handed it back to the captain. Thank you for letting me speak with them. The captain shook his hand. His grip was firm, respectful. Sir, it's an honor to have you on my flight. David smiled, tired but genuine. Just get us to Florida safe. That's all I need. He turned to leave. The first officer stood and saluted. David paused. Then slowly he returned it. When he walked back into the cabin, every passenger was standing. They weren't clapping, weren't cheering. They were just standing, silent, respectful. The businessman stepped into the aisle, blocked David's path. For a moment, they stood face to face. Then the businessman extended his hand. I'm sorry, I judged you, I was wrong. David shook his hand. You did what most people do. You looked before seeing. It's okay. It's not okay, but thank you. David walked back to row 10. Emily launched herself into his arms. Daddy, you're a real pilot. You're a hero. He held her tight, kissed the top of her head. No, sweetheart, I was just a pilot. Now I'm just your dad. She pulled back, looked him in the eye. You're both, and that's better. He smiled, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes, the kind he hadn't worn in years. Yeah, kiddo, maybe it is. The plane landed in Florida 30 minutes later. As it taxied to the gate, passengers noticed something unusual. Fire trucks lined the runway. Not for emergency, for ceremony. Their water cannons arced over the plane, a traditional salute reserved for retiring pilots and distinguished passengers. Emily pressed her face to the window. Dad, look, they're making rainbows for you. David watched in silence, his throat tight. When the door opened, he expected to walk off like any other passenger. Instead, a formation waited on the tarmac. 6 Air Force officers in dress blues, standing at attention. The captain approached David as he stepped onto the jet bridge. Sir, there are some people who want to meet you. David descended the stairs. Emily held his hand. The officers saluted in unison. One stepped forward, a young woman with captain's bars. Her eyes were bright with emotion. Colonel Cole, I'm Captain Sarah Lynn. Raptor 2, we spoke on the radio. David nodded. Captain Lin, you didn't have to come all this way. Yes, sir, I did. Our entire squadron is based 20 miles from here. When we heard you were on that flight, we had to pay our respects. Another officer spoke. Older, silver hair, a colonel's insignia. Sir, I flew with you in Falcon Dawn. I was Hawk 5. You saved my life that day. I've wanted to thank you for 12 years. David's eyes widened. Jenkins. Tom Jenkins. Yes, sir. The man's voice cracked. You told me to trust my instruments when I couldn't see anything. You talked me through the storm. I have 2 grandkids now because of you. They embraced. 2 old warriors, brothers in the scow. The other passengers filed past. Many stopped, shook David's hand, thanked him. The businessman approached last. He pulled out his business card. Mr. Cole, I own a Veterans Support Foundation. If you ever need anything at all, please call me. And I'm making a donation in your name today. It's the least I can do. David took the card. Thank you, but you don't owe me anything. Maybe not, but I owe it to myself. To be better. You taught me that today. News crews had gathered beyond the security fence. Phones recorded everything. By that evening, the video went viral. Unknown hero receives fighter jet salute mid-flight. The man in row 10, a viral moment of respect. Millions of views, thousands of comments, people sharing their own stories of quiet heroes, of parents who sacrificed, of veterans who served and never bragged. Back at the terminal, Emily tugged on her father's sleeve. She held up a piece of paper, a drawing she had been working on during the landing. 3 airplanes, 2 F-22s flanking 1 commercial jet. Below it, she had written in careful letters, 2 Raptors and 1 dad. David looked at it, his vision blurred. Can we hang this at home? Emily asked. Yeah, kiddo, front and center. Captain Lin stepped forward one more time. Sir, our squadron wants you to know. We fly your manual. We live your tactics. And every time we take off, we say the same thing. Fly smart, fly safe, bring everyone home. David's voice was barely a whisper. That's all I ever wanted. You gave us more than that, sir. You gave us a standard, a legacy. He shook her hand. Then keep it alive. Fly better than we did. Every day, sir, I promise. The officers saluted one final time. Then they were gone. David and Emily walked toward baggage claim. Just a father and daughter, heading to visit a grave, to remember someone they both loved. But now, Emily understood a little more about the man holding her hand, the man who flew so others could land. 1 year later, the National Air and Space Museum unveiled a new exhibit. Viper 1, the man who flew so others could land. David stood in front of it with Emily, now 10 years old, taller, more confident. Display cases held artifacts. His old helmet, flight logs, handwritten notes from the Falcon Dawn mission. Photographs showed younger versions of the pilots he had saved. Their families, their children. A plaque read, Colonel David Cole flew through the impossible and brought hope home. His legacy lives not in medals, but in the lives still flying because he taught them how. Emily pointed to the helmet. Dad, that's yours. It was. Now it belongs here with the others. An elderly veteran approached. He moved slowly, leaned on a cane. But when he saw David, he straightened, saluted. Welcome home, sir. David returned the salute. Welcome home, soldier. They shook hands. The old man's eyes were wet. I never got to thank you. You trained my son. He's a pilot now. Because of you. He's a pilot because he worked hard. That's all him. Maybe, but you showed him the way. The man walked on. David watched him go. Emily tugged his sleeve. She held a small model airplane, one they had built together on that flight a year ago. Can I put this with the exhibit? What for, sweetheart? So people remember the best pilots don't just fly planes, they help other people fly too. David knelt down, eye level with his daughter. When did you get so wise? I have a good teacher. She walked to the display case. A museum curator opened it for her. Emily placed the tiny model next to the helmet. It looked small, humble. Handmade? Perfect. David stood, looked at the entire exhibit, at the faces of pilots he had trained, at the legacy he had never meant to build. He thought about his wife, the pilot who had loved the sky as much as he did. Who would have been proud of this moment? He thought about Emily. Growing up with a father who flew desks now instead of jets, but who still carried the sky inside him. A young boy ran up to the display. His father followed. "Dad, look, a real hero." The father read the plaque, then looked at David. Recognition flickered. "Wait, you're him. You're Viper 1. David smiled. "I was. Now I'm just a dad." "Just a dad?" The man shook his head. "My brother flew under your command. He said you were the best leader he ever had. I just tried to bring everyone home." "You did more than that, sir. You gave them a reason to believe they could." David and Emily left the museum as the sun set. Outside, a plane flew overhead, contrails streaking gold against the purple sky. Emily looked up. "Do you miss it, Dad?" David watched the plane disappear into the horizon. "Every day, but I found something better." "What's that?" He squeezed her hand. "Teaching you to fly." She smiled. "I'm ready when you are." "Then let's start tomorrow." They walked into the evening, a father and daughter, two people learning to soar in their own way. Behind them, carved into the museum wall, a final quote. "You don't need wings to lead, just the heart to lift others." The legacy of Viper 1. Not in the schemamon, but in every life he helped take flight. Subscribe if you believe the greatest pilots still fly below the radar.